Welcome to the Rockabye Revenue Podcast with me, Abby Watson. I'm a mum of 4 and a business strategist, and I train people to become hypnobirthing teachers. In the last decade, I've built a thriving baby business that grew beyond my wildest dreams. This podcast is for you if you run a business or dream of running a business in the birth and baby industry. You want to change lives whilst making more money. I'm talking about creating sustainable income whilst being present for the people that matter most. I believe for our baby businesses to have the impact we desire, we must be rewarded. On this podcast, expect me to share actionable strategies without the jargon. I've been where you are. I've built a business while raising 4 little ones, and now I'm here to help you turn your passion into profit while creating the life you've always dreamed of. So let's get started. Hello, lovely one. I hope you're having the best day wherever you are listening from. I'm here to talk about making your business suit you first and foremost. And this is something that I have been thinking about after I had a lovely conversation with one of my hypnobirthing teacher graduates recently. She's got a great business. However, sometimes the way that she is offering her classes isn't suiting her and her family. So I gave her some advice about that. And I really think that advice that I gave her would be useful for anyone here that is feeling like, oh, actually, I might need to switch things up in my business a little bit right now, but I'm scared. All is going well. I don't want to rock the boat. I have been there. I'll take you back probably about 8 years. And I was running group courses every single Saturday morning. So I'd have a monthly group hypnobirthing course in my living room that I'd run 12 months a year, and the course lasted 4 sessions. So I noticed that I was only ever getting a Saturday morning free when there was actually 5 Saturdays in a month. Didn't happen very often. Now, when my firstborn, Harris, went to primary school, I felt the need to have a few more Saturday mornings available. You know, I wasn't seeing him quite as much in the week, so I really wanted to have weekends where I was free the whole time. Now, don't get me wrong, literally my classes lasted Saturday morning and I'd have the rest of my day with my family and then the day after. And I absolutely loved teaching hypnobirthing, and it felt, you know, a really nice change from being mum. But there was this need to kind of think, oh, wouldn't it be great if some Saturdays we could have that farm trip, for example, you know? So that's when I started thinking, could I continue with my 12 classes a year, Saturday morning, but make my course be over 3 sessions rather than 4. Now, of course, immediately I thought, no, I can't do that. People will think that I'm shortchanging them. You know, people will think this isn't as good of a course. How will I cram everything in? I'll have to miss bits out and I'll be letting my clients down. Oh, all is going well. Why would I change things? It might mean a decrease in bookings. So I had all the reasons why I shouldn't. But I sat down and I thought, okay, logistically, how would this work? So at the time, I was teaching hypnobirthing over 10 hours, okay? So each of the sessions were 2 hours and a half. Okay, and of course each session involved a lovely hypnosis session at the end. So I thought to myself, right, well, I can't split 10 hours very easily. So what about if I moved to 9 hours over 3 sessions, which would mean each session lasting 3 hours? Because it's 3 sessions, I would be losing one hypnosis script. But in actual fact, my session time would be very much the same. So actually, I wouldn't have to change much content. So I decided to go for it. What was the response? Well, the response was that I found that I was even more quickly able to fill my groups. Because if you think about it from a client's perspective, having to find 3 Saturdays that they are available is probably a lot easier than finding 4 Saturdays that they're available, you know? And yes, I loved 4 sessions because I definitely found that the groups would get really close with each other because they'd seen each other so much more. But I realised it had to suit my life first and foremost. When we want a sustainable business, a freedom-led business, it must always suit us first and foremost. That doesn't mean that we ignore what our clients need. Absolutely not. You know, we really think about what would work for clients too, but we don't prioritize that over us. Because I tell you what happens if we do that. We stop doing it, but we jack the whole thing in instead. Because we're like, actually, this business didn't work for me as much as I thought it did, you know? So I'm sharing that story because I want to show you that actually we can have a lot of resistance from mixing things up a little bit, from changing things. And actually, when we put it out there, sometimes the response is even better than we imagined. Now, going back to when I was chatting to one of my lovely graduates, and she might be listening, she's amazing, love her as a person, as a business owner, and I can see she has got such incredible potential in her business. She really has. And she shared with me that she was teaching her sessions over 5 sessions because she really wanted to give them so much, you know? She wanted to include everything that she possibly could into her courses because she really wanted them to leave as equipped as they possibly could. And I said to her, if you ran your sessions over, if you run your course, should I say, over 7 sessions, could you fill those sessions? And she said, yeah, absolutely. And of course she could, because actually we can always put more in, you know? If we're talking about preparing someone for birth, there's so much that we could possibly include. And I tell you this, they won't retain it all anyway. Their mind is not going to absorb every single bit of information. So where we can feel like more is better, quite often less is more. You know, leaving them with really strong takeaways that feel manageable and doable. Okay. Now, with this lovely graduate, you know, she was telling me that, you know, working weekends, doing classes over those 5 sessions weren't ideally what she wanted to do. And she'd moved her classes to a weeknight. Great idea. Okay. But she found that actually that wasn't quite as popular with potential clients. So I proposed that she could do something in between. Yes, she didn't want to give up so much of her weekend time, but actually evenings weren't working as well as those weekends. So perhaps could she offer weekends, but really think about changing the lengths of sessions and the amount of sessions so it was working for her first and foremost, but it was actually really attractive to clients too. So we talked about running the course perhaps over a full day or perhaps over 2 chunky sessions, And of course, there's resistance there, isn't there? There's like, oh, the logistics of that, how they're going to manage having lunch. Oh, they might not be interested in that. How on earth am I going to fit things in? And yes, if she is reducing her hours, she will absolutely have to let go of some of the things in her course. But actually, if it's going to work for her family, she's going to be able to be in this for the long game. And actually, let's think about this from a client's perspective. Coming and doing a course in 2 action-packed sessions or 1 immersive one might actually be really attractive and appealing. And actually, she might find that her bookings really increase because it feels more doable for clients. Okay, so this is what I'm inviting you to do today. Think about if there are any areas of your business that you think could work better for your life. Because if there is resentment, not to your clients, but to how you are working your business, it's time to mix it up a bit. And the wonderful thing about so many of our businesses, whether you're a hypnobirthing teacher, whether you're a sleep consultant, whether you run baby classes, is often people don't always know what you were previously offering. So making this change, it might feel big, it might feel scary for you. You might feel like everyone in the world is going to notice, but in actual fact, they probably won't, And I can think of so many times in my business that I have had to make these little shifts, and I have been scared. And my goodness, it has given me long-term the freedom that I have needed. So if I think about my business right now, so I train people to become confident and equipped hypnobirthing teachers. Now, when I started out training hypnobirthing teachers, of course, they were doing some online modules like they do today. And then the live training was on an evening. Okay, I was doing it over several sessions on an evening. And at first, that really worked for me and my trainees because it was COVID. Life was really different. Many people were not at work during the day. Many people had their family around them during the day. So actually nipping off upstairs for a few hours was a welcome break. As time went on and lockdowns were released, I still continued with that because it was what was working. And then I got to a point where I was like, actually, I'm not sure it is working as much. I saw that some of my trainees were struggling with that time. They had bedtimes to deal with. They had partners that were now back at work. It wasn't working in the same way it was before. And ultimately, it wasn't working for me in the same way as before. Life had started up again. And actually, when it came to 7:30 on a night, I was exhausted. Being online for a few hours, putting loads of energy into a fantastic training didn't seem a good use of my time. So I switched it, and instead I did 2 full days. Of course, I thought, oh my gosh, how's it going to work in these longer formats online? I took the plunge and I made that change, and my goodness, it was the best thing that I've ever done. I actually think for my trainees, they get even more out of it, because they're able to put aside these 2 days where they are immersing themselves in the practicalities of teaching hypnobirthing. So many of my trainees are mums. So many of them have other jobs, other roles. So to be able to put 2 days aside instead of bits of time here and there is much easier, And of course, I've been able to think about how I host those sessions, giving people lots of practical activities to do, giving them breaks, so that even though we're online, it feels super manageable. For me, as the person that runs the business, oh my gosh, it works for me so much more. Again, enabling me to continue to have this business that works so well around my life, my family, and anything else that I've got going on. Okay. So there's your permission slip if you need one. To change things up if you need to. Really think about how things are going to work even better for your life, your family, and maybe even your clients too. As always, I would love to know your biggest takeaway from this episode. Please do come over to Instagram at loveyourbirth_training and let me know what you have come away thinking. And I shall see you next time for another episode of Rockabye Revenue. Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening to Rockabye Revenue. I hope this episode has left you with some fresh ideas and bundles of motivation. If you enjoyed this episode, do make sure you click subscribe so you never miss an installment. And if you found this episode useful, I'd love you forever if you leave a 5-star review, helping this podcast reach the ears of more of the helpers in this world. And remember, keep changing lives. See you next time.